Hi, I'm KS Garner, and you're listening to the Solo Nerd Podcast. Today, I'll be speaking with writer and creator Mark Scrase, here to promote the upcoming third issue of their Zip series coming soon to Kickstarter late fall. Welcome, Mike.
How's it going? You did the thing. You said Mark. Don't worry about it. It's
That's
funny
it.
because
That's
most
it.
people get my last name wrong.
That's it. Mark. I thought it said Mike. It says Mike Scrase, right?
Yeah, yeah. When you were doing the intro, you said Mark at
Oh
first.
my God.
But that's fine. No, it's kind of
Welcome.
a running joke that people get my last name wrong. So it's a bit interesting that you put my first one on. It's
That's
fine.
crazy. It's crazy because I've been practicing your last name, and I
Yeah.
got it the last name right, but not the first name. Anyway, welcome, Mike.
Hi.
Outside of my introduction, who is Mike Scrase in their own words?
Well, I am a person who has a very difficult time um, being committed to one specific creative outlet. I'm a comics writer, screenplay writer. I've done stand-up comedy. I've acted in films. I've done a lot of stuff, but I'm mainly talking about my comic zip today. Um, it was inspired by my lifelong experience with living with disability. Specifically, when I began writing it was about my experience living with a visual impairment. But actually, during the production of my first Kickstarter campaign, I also was diagnosed with ADHD as well. And a lot of people had mentioned that they thought when they read the first issue that it kind of reminded them of neurodiversity. And I at the time went, oh, that's cool. I didn't mean it to be like that. But apparently I had some of my own experiences in there after all.
Yeah, that's what we tend to do as artists. We kind of just write what we know, whether we're conscious of it or not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for new readers, what is Zip about, and what should current readers expect in issue 3?
Well, it's a series about imperfect superhumans. Or is it? Because it's actually, like I say, an analogy for disability. So if you've ever had one of those, if you ever played one of those games where one of your friends says a superpower that they'd like to have, and then your job is to mess up that superpower. Someone wrote a comic about that, and it was me. So our main character, Zip, she has super speed, but because you would need like a really fast reactions to cope with having super speed, um, she sees the world slow all the time. So other people appear to be talking like this, and she, on the other hand, has to kind of she speaks like a chipmunk in terms of how fast she is. So she has to be like slow herself down in order to like just be understood and not like freak people out and stuff. She's got accelerated biorhythms, so she needs to sleep twice as often, but for half as long. So it's pretty hard for her to hold down a job because an 8-hour shift feels like an eternity to her. And I say eternity, could also bring up the other character who's immortal. He's been alive for so long that his brain has just slowed to a crawl. So he's kind of the opposite of her, where he's basically in like a vegetative state because his mind can't handle being alive for so long. So in this world, like basically the idea is that the way that superpowers make your body so different to the ordinary person, the human body has like a kind of a delicate balance to it. And when you just throw something out of whack with that balance, it can kind of create a disability-esque um, effect in them, even if it's something that seems like it would actually be something that makes somebody superior. It's sort of kind of looks at disability and just basically views it as more about the things that make us different, really.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's interesting to me that you've written and created a work like this, because I remember, I think this was in maybe October of 2019. I went to a panel of fantasy writers who all had disabilities across the board. Some of them were legally blind,
Mm-hmm.
some of them had, service dogs, some of them had invisible disabilities like chronic pain and whatnot. And there was a question someone asked about cure-alls, quote unquote cure-all stories, where it's like, oh, if, a character, her vision was, she woke up one day with 20/20 vision and whatnot, or like one day this character didn't need their wheelchair, or the chronic pain went away and things like that. And they were like, they don't like cure-alls because it doesn't get into the fact how this new power now affects the body or affects day-to-day life.
And
now.
It's kind of an erasure, really. This has really been kind of a discourse online for quite a while, because there was this independent game designer who made this thing called the combat wheelchair, and a lot of people got up in arms about that because they're like, oh, people wouldn't design dungeons with stairs. This is like a D&D thing, Dungeons and Dragons, the role-playing game. And they wouldn't design dungeons with stairs. And my counter to that is, well, in Dungeons and Dragons, you've got all kinds of creatures that have different legs, and some of them don't have legs at all. They're just like big slug things. So maybe they would design dungeons that were wheelchair accessible, because they need them to be like carrion crawler accessible or whatever else, because there's just all kinds of creatures in D&D. So obviously you build dungeons that are accessible for them just because you want the big bad evil guy wants to get their minions in somehow. And it just happens that, the orc entrance is also wheelchair accessible by, coincidence or whatever. I mean, it's a fantasy game, and you can't imagine people in wheelchairs in it. It's, it's insane. And people are just very hurtful about that kind of thing. They just, it's just very, I mean, a lot of it as well just comes from ignorance. And this comic is kind of really about that, looking at kind of the subtle side of prejudice that's propped up by ignorance and apathy, as opposed to the more traditionally understood motivator of fear and hatred. If you're talking about a hot button issue, because I believe you asked me about our new issue. I don't know if I'm going too fast, but I might be channeling that Zip energy. But our new issue is actually about generative AI. So in the new issue, this shadowy corporation have kind of been lurking around in the background, have created this ultimate consumer product, and it's basically a cross between 3D printing and generative AI. So it's a bunch of nanobots that are programmed to disassemble, like atomize existing like consumer products, and then use that to basically build training data and rebuild new consumer products that are quote unquote new, but just essentially built up from the training data that they've absorbed, and then create new things to be sold on the market. But the problem is these nanobots are designed to seek out the most complex training data they can and find the most complicated objects they possibly can. And they have identified the most complex object that they can possibly get training data from: human beings. So they're coming for you. And they will stop at nothing to atomize the human race and basically steal everything that we are.
It's crazy. So, but let's back up a little bit. Can you walk us through your creative process for Zip from, I guess, concept to completion? So you have this idea that you want to create a superhero that has these various disabilities, and then one character that has these abilities but kind of ends up becoming disabled, if that's correct. So the
superpowers themselves are the disability. It's basically looking at it's basically viewing kind of disability in a way that kind of, it's more of a, exploring disability is something that's different about people with disabilities and not necessarily something that makes us lesser, really. I had the idea originally when I was reading a Cracked.com article. Have you heard of Cracked?
No.
So it's like, it was, I mean, they've changed quite a lot now because they've been under new management, but in their heyday, they kind of published non-fiction articles, but they were comedy non-fiction articles about like pop culture and science and things. And one of their more popular articles was called Seven Awesome Superpowers Ruined by Science. And that was where I got the idea, because they had an entry on Super Speed that was talking about, how speedsters would burn up and how their reflexes would have to be like really fast all the time. And that was where I got the idea from. But I was reading it and thinking, this is very entertaining and everything, but I actually think there's a story in this in of itself, because it's kind of like one of those nitpicky websites that goes, well, this wouldn't work in a real life. But I was like, well, if it did, but that was the point of the story. It kind of resonated with me because it made me think about my own disability and how I could try and explain my viewpoint on it through this genre.
So has the process of creating the series changed in any way throughout, like from the first issue to the second one and now the third one?
Well, not really. I mean, I write a script, and we've got a really great artist in Sam Espina. He's kind of a veteran artist, so he doesn't really, his process doesn't really change much, or at least not that I can perceive, because he's really mastered his craft already, to be honest with you. I mean, some of this, I've got some stickers here, and I mean, just look at just look at it. I mean, it's incredible. So from my point of view, I don't think our process has really changed all that much from the first issue of our comic. I mean, I suppose I used to do the comic as a web comic back when I had like no money, and I was drawing it all myself. So the process has changed from that. But that's not something you're going to see in our issue 1 or anything, because our new version of the print comic has kind of replaced that old web comic now. I mean, this new comic kind of puts that old web comic to shame, really. We've actually, I mean, with our new version of the comic that I've brought, new people on, like, our artist San Espina, but also letterer Farron Delgado, some great cover artists in Matt Schofield and Vanessa Cardinali. And we've been picked up by Markosia now, a UK publisher. So cool. That's been really great.
Yeah. So speaking of your collaborators, how did you find them and know that they were the right people to work on Zip?
Well, basically, there was a Facebook group for comic creatives, and I was originally just looking for an editor to help me like improve my webcomic, but it ended up snowballing where I found somebody named Chris Evans who thought that we could do something bigger with it, and so he suggested Sam Espina and Farron Delgado. Basically, I mean, I met Matt Schofield through like a review of his comic that I did, Steamroller Man. But basically everybody else was introduced to me by Chris.
Okay. So I'm just looking at your other work here on the website. So you've created and completed multiple work, comics, graphic novels, what have you, over the years. So what do you do with the works in progress that you may have abandoned? And I guess what advice could you offer to other creators in regards to works in progresses or abandoned stories?
I mean, I do have abandoned stories, I suppose, but I feel like I've always got like balls that I'm juggling in my mind, I suppose.
Yeah.
I think it's just a discipline thing, because I was diagnosed with ADHD, and that's kind of, obviously famously the thing where you come up with a bunch of side projects. For me, it's really just like passion for it that's driven me to want to keep going. And I think like if you finish something once, you know what finishing something feels like. So, if you've never finished a project, then you might get overwhelmed because it all feels like a lot to take on. So I guess the best thing to do, I mean, I think, this isn't really news to too many people, but it is a good idea to start out with short form stuff so that you get the feel of finishing something, so that you know how to, structure your work and take it one step at a time. But I mean, I got in my old day job, we had downtime a lot of the time, and I actually got about 30,000 words into writing a horror novel just because I was bored at work and I didn't have anything else to do. And we didn't have like access to Microsoft Word or anything. So I literally wrote it in an email and just emailed it to myself over and over. And then I managed to persuade my manager to email it to my personal email address when I left that job, because we couldn't email out from that, from our office email address. So I had to have my manager forward it to my personal. And so I could copy it all into Word. But, since I left that job, I haven't actually done a whole lot of work on that book. So,
Yeah, I've done something similar. I did it on sticky notes because I didn't want to write it on a computer. I was afraid that if I did it on a computer, on my work computer, they would like steal it from me somehow. Right?
Yeah.
So I just did it on a bunch of sticky notes. Like I still have them somewhere around here. But yeah, and then eventually someone suggested the Google Drive, like the Word drive in Google, like that, so we can go from computer to computer. As long as you're logged in. So I just started using that instead. But yeah, I would just, like I said, a lot of downtime, or I'm finish my work early, because I mean, I'm not like Zip, but 8 hours a day at work is kind of a drag for me. That does feel like an eternity, because I feel like I don't need to be there 8 hours. But
we could get into that. I mean,
that's crazy. Let's see. But is there anything else that you wanted to share about Zip? Kickstarter, maybe the rewards for potential backers that they can look forward to once the campaign launches?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've got so Markosia only sells single issues in digital format. You can get those on Amazon and Drive-Thru Comics, but the only way to get our comics in print is to get them from one of my Kickstarters, or to get it from a convention or something. But I've been very lax about actually organizing that. So if you want one of these, then it's going to have to be the Kickstarter. We've also got stickers and that poster behind me. I think I've shown off the stickers, but I'll show them off again. And I'm going to be offering a few other special things as well. I mean, we've given these away, and we've given these as rewards for previous campaigns, but there are going to be other additional rewards that I'm introducing for this one too. Obviously, you'll be able to get the third issue in print, and if you don't want to shell out for the print, there's also going to be digital versions too. But yeah, I mean, if you were interested, if you read the first issue and you were interested in those two sketchy guys were in the black van, they're making a return, so you'll learn more about them and who they work for. You're also going to learn more about the extended universe of the comic, because we will be introduced to a new superhuman character named Sunflare. He's basically a retired superhero with fire powers. So that's going to be a bit more nugget of information about the world of superhumans in this universe and how they work.
Cool. So Mike, will you be at any cons this year in the UK over there?
I would like to. I mean, this year, no, because that's going to not be enough time for me to organize. Like I said, I have been very lax about getting con appearances. I've been meaning to do it, but side projects and whatnot. But I mean, I hope that I will be able to arrange some for next year. I just don't have anything specific to announce, unfortunately.
That's cool. That's cool. But where can people find you online, I guess, once you do make the announcement?
Yeah, well, our main website is zipcomic.co.uk. That's basically the hub for everything. We do have quite a few socials, but our tag is zipcomic.uk on pretty much every platform. So you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, TikTok, and YouTube. pretty much all of them,
Mhm.
because I don't even, every 5 minutes you're like, oh, this social media is out of fashion now. Oh, this one's out of fashion. This one's out of fashion, and I don't know what's in fashion anymore. So I'm just like, just all of them. Just throw it all out there and see what works.
Okay. Are you also on? I guess Blue Sky is supposed to be the new thing too for a
Yeah,
lot of
I
people.
applied to get into that, but they were only giving out so many invites or something. I mean, this was like a year ago that I did that. Maybe I should look into it again, but wasn't it? I mean, I'm thinking about that when it like just came out, so maybe it's completely different now. But I remember, or maybe it was Mastodon. I can't remember, but I just remember there was one like that where I tried to sign up for it, and they're like, "We're not accepting new people at the moment," so I didn't get in.
I
But
don't know.
I mean,
I just heard about Blue Sky. I know that a lot of the people are over there, but I don't. I mean, I don't have a Blue Sky, so I don't know.
yeah. I mean, like you never hear about any action because like Blue Sky's a thing, but you never hear about any like like nobody ever embeds a Blue Sky post or whatever they call it. So usually the
Uh,
mark of a social media is when you see it get referenced elsewhere. You see a lot of
uh,
TikToks elsewhere, but
I don't know. Maybe it's because it's invite only. Maybe that's why. I guess
yeah.
only people that are there only talk to each other. I don't know.
Yeah, but then you wonder how much good that's going to do to promote your work, really, wouldn't you? I don't know. I don't know.
I
I
don't
feel like I'm
know.
a little lost with social medias these days.
Me too. That's fine with me. But all right. Well, thank you again to writer and creator Mike Scrase
Thank
for
you.
joining us here today to promote the upcoming third issue of their Zip series, coming soon to Kickstarter in late fall. That's like late October, early November. All of Mike's socials will be listed in this episode's details alongside the Kickstarter link for those who are interested. Again, I'm KS Garner, and you've been listening to the Solo Nerd Podcast. Thank you.